Andy here with the Progressive Conservative Podcast. Welcome back. So I want to talk about hitting the reset button, like the reset button you hit on a video game console. And really what I want to hit that reset button for is let's understand propaganda, what the actual term means, a little bit better than what we likely have up till now. Now, obviously, you have seen the news with all the different actions happening in the Donald Trump administration, whether they're good or bad. That, I'm not really here to point that out so much, but what I want to just say is a lot of things are moving so fast. We're losing departments, we're losing employees, aids being cut off for foreign countries. People are getting their cases dismissed or pardoned, which a pardon video I want to put together in the future, so stay tuned to that. But there's just so much happening in such a small or short period of time that I think we need to pump the brakes and slow it down so the average American can understand exactly what's happening. Now, I mentioned in my very first video how Donald Trump used the pronoun, yes, a pronoun, of they or they apostrophe RE, and really weaponize that against Democrats. For example, they're eating the dogs and cats, they're criminals, they can't speak English, they're waking Sleepy Joe off the beach. I mean, I can go on and on about different things Donald Trump has depicted as Democrats as just basically being the enemy. And I looked at those transcripts, the one from the Erie, Pennsylvania rally and the debate that he had with Kamala Harris. The only time Donald Trump mentioned that he was going to cut anything was to the Department of Education during his rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. There was nothing that was said about, I'm going to cut USAID, I'm going to have mass firings of multiple different departments, including the FBI. I was going to put this person in charge. It's going to basically almost be like the fox guarding the hen house, who is Elon Musk. Again, I don't want to go too deep into that because I don't know the whole story myself at this time of what actually is happening, but it does look suspect. Now, I want to come back to propaganda and the simplistic form of how can we hit that reset button and understand a little bit better when we see it happen in real time. So the definition that propaganda has in the Apple Dictionary is information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a particular cause, doctrine, or point of view. And when you look at past examples, I mean, you can go as recent as and argue this that Anthony Fauci and some of his information that he released of how we can mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic, you could probably call that propaganda. Whether if it's a propaganda that saved people or it was just governmental control, there's a lot of varying perspectives on that. There's so much to unpack there that's just for another video, another time, if that interests me. And I don't know if I'll ever do a video on that. But also can include the Germany, the Hitler, the Nazis in the 30s and the 40s. It could also include Pinochet in Chile. We can talk Hugo Chavez. We can talk Fidel Castro, China, North Korea, Kim Jong-un. Really, we can go on and on about different types of propaganda that are out there, depending on what part of the spectrum they will fall on, whether if it's the left or the right. Now, I came across this very short video. It was a minute long. It was done by Rebecca Rogers. Has some sort of social media footprint. And this video got, I think I recall, at least 250,000, if not more, views. And really what she put out there was, this is how I explain to my high school students, because she's proclaiming herself as a teacher, how I explain what propaganda is. And I'm going to paraphrase this for you, what that is. And I'll link that video in the description if you want to go see that yourself. So basically what Rebecca Rogers said is, imagine propaganda like a nature documentary. The first documentary that you're watching is about a big whale, maybe a beluga whale. You watch them swim through the ocean. They blow water out their blowhole. I mean, I've personally seen that, and that's a really cool sight. They also jump out of the water and land back in the ocean, just as depicted in the Pacific Life logo. But as you continue to watch this documentary and you're watching the whale out to sea, and I don't know if this is part of the whale's diet or not, but the whale sees a stingray and the whale is hungry, and the whale just goes and pounces on the stingray and eats it. And as you're a consumer of that documentary, you're like, well, the whale is hungry. He's on the top of the food chain. Guy had, he's big boy, needs to eat. And really, you wouldn't make a big deal of what is going on with that stingray. But let's say now you're watching a documentary on a stingray, and you're seeing them swim through the water. They're just elegant, and just how their shape and their body kind of just flutters as it moves across the water. You got that barb, and again, another really amazing creature. And maybe you're seeing how their offspring grow. Maybe you're seeing how they eat food. Maybe more plant life off the bottom of the water. But then here comes this whale. And you're like, oh no, you can't eat the stingray. And you're going to have a reaction, likely when you're sucked into that documentary, that you don't want the stingray to have anything happen to it. And when you take a step back from that very simplistic example and then add in what actually my definition of propaganda is, you can see that it can just happen in just the simplest forms. And so now when we actually consume what's happening on the world, whether if it's in politics in Washington or something local, maybe a school board or city hall or just even a restaurant closing and why it was closed, there's going to be propaganda behind that. And a lot of times it's pointing to one side or the other didn't do this, or a tax policy or their agenda caused this to happen. And a lot of times, sure, that's speculative. A lot of times I feel it's an innuendo. But really, let's take a step back. As Americans, for one, we like to have accountability in government. So with all this happening in government, with all these firings and shutting off aid, help me as the average American understand what's happening. Now, Elon Musk was in the Oval Office earlier in the week, and he basically was answering some questions from media, which I'm curious how those folks were invited there in the first place, but that's neither here nor there. But one of the questions was asked him is, how are you policing yourself? And another question was, how are you showing accountability? And the accountability question really stood out to me. Basically, he was saying X, which is the platform that Elon Musk owns, or Twitter, is going to have information of how we're accountable. So basically, you're telling me that in a little area, 250 characters or something, maybe with a link, you're going to tell me what you're doing. And that's going to be the context is what's happening is on a social media site. Now, obviously, a lot of people get information from social media, but I feel that propaganda is starting to leak into play here. Now, I understand that we, as citizens, want to make sure our tax dollars are used in an efficient manner. And I have no qualms about looking to find that efficiency. But it just seems like we're just across the board, we're just cutting, and we'll ask the questions later whether or not that was really legitimate or purposeful or not. And that really leaves the average American are there going to be impacts downstream? Now, if everybody's being fired from Washington, are we going to have a housing crash as far as housing prices? So the people that actually did pay their mortgage and paid, and all of a sudden they can't sell their house because they're underwater? Is that what's going to happen? That's going to impact some people, maybe people that weren't intended by these cuts. Now, there's a lot happening, a lot of stuff going on. But as Americans, let's step back. Let's get a full picture. If we're saving $1 billion a day like Elon Musk is saying, and let's just say that $1 billion a day is basically paying back the debt. And we're not even getting into whether or not that $1 billion is going to, do anything to help the deficit. It's just, maybe let's just say it's the debt. Now, $1 billion is 1,000 billion that makes $1 trillion. We're $37 trillion as of this airing in debt. Now, it's going to take over 100 years if we had 0% interest to pay $1 billion, if we're making savings of $1 billion to actually get to the $37 trillion that we owe. Now, I feel that that is basically well out of hand. And that's a whole video in itself, and I'd like to put that together in the future. But that also means that we're going to have 12 to 13 at minimum different presidential administrations over that 100-year period of time. So I feel like this debt's gotten out of control. We're cutting $1 billion a day, and we're doing it to the people who are in the middle class. You're basically going to spend that money again. And so if it goes to Amazon, whether if it goes to a lender to pay interest or housing, I mean, there's going to be tax on all that other stuff that other companies are going to make. And it makes the economy run. So if we're going to cut off some of the fuel for the economy, what other impacts are we going to have? So propaganda, I just want to say, hit that reset button. And just take a step back, and also demand more accountability instead of just being told something on an X site that, how do we know if it's even true? So this is not politically correct. This is progressive conservative. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it if you made it this far. Other actions you can help out the channel are hitting the like button, share, or even comment, make your thoughts known about what I just said. That will also help the channel get reach out to others, and then secondly, it'll help the channel grow as more people, I just feel, need to hear this type of message versus the left versus right paradigm. So again, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.